so here's what the harnesses look like. So on both sides I did a single wrap and a double wrap and a no wrap. I have 3 wires, and then just like every 12 inches or so I did a wrap of tape around them to kind of keep them together. Now obviously I didn't connect them to the power wire because we want to kind of separate them. On the driver's side I did the same thing, but on this one I included a piece of Cat 6. I only had blue Cat 6, so I used blue in this case. The only black that I have is outdoor, and it has like resin in it that I just didn't want to use it. It's kind of hard to terminate. So there goes my all black cabling plan out the window, but it is what it is. I'll deal with it. So now we're going to work on running it. So to start running the cables, the first thing you kind of want to do is, in my opinion, take the back seat out. There's clips on the front, so you just kind of pull up firmly on the front of the seat. We'll do the same on this side. It just kind of lifts up like that. And then these, they kind of poke through, so you have to remove them. So there's like a little plastic thing there. So just kind of lift up from the back. I'm missing something here. Let me put the camera on the tripod and we'll try it again. Tripod's over here. Alright. So, oftentimes these seats have a bracket in the back. So what you want to do is kind of unlatch them and then push them back and pull them up. But I'm not exactly sure how these are in there, so so these do come out. Yeah, there is a hook. So if you go, there you go. I just didn't push it far enough back. So what you want to do is kind of grab the side here, go down and up, and then it'll come out like that. And then we'll get to see how gross the under the seat is. Alright. Not too bad, actually. My kids aren't allowed to eat cheeseburgers in my car, but like I said, I bought this used. And this is a spot that's never cleaned by the dealership, so a little bit of crap here. A little bit of padding. Found a quarter. So that comes out fairly easily. And then it makes some of these other things a little bit more accessible, like this. Just lifts up. And then back here, there's kind of a snap straight up like that, and this comes out. And one thing that you will notice is sometimes these retainer clips are left behind, so you might have to you might have to take these metal clips out and reattach them to this so that they can be snapped back in and stay in. So we're just going to remove some of this trim. Alright, so the front lifts up just like the back does, but I do want to remove this B-pillar piece here. And honestly, you can fish around it, but I find that these channels are difficult to run cabling in, so getting this out of the way tends to help with the Mercedes. So you're going to need a tool like this, or it should just be careful, but there's a plastic clip here So you kind of unsnap that, and then up here there are these things that kind of slide in to the metal. So if you use a right angle pick like this guy, I've broken several right angle picks doing this exact job. You kind of work it in there a little bit. Being careful not to push too hard or potentially scratch anything if you slip. I don't know if I like these icon picks better or worse than the snap-on ones. The metal is softer, so they actually can bend, which can be nice because you don't break them, but also crappy because they're not as stiff as the snap-on ones are. You just kind of want to work this back and forth. Let's grab something different now that I've got some space. Sorry, I'm trying to show it, but I really need both hands. Alright. So just kind of like that, you want to get that out. Now you've got it loose in the bottom. And then what you can kind of do is bring the seat all the way forward. And that gets you to the back. And now you can do the same thing on the back side. So kind of move this out of the way. Get this. And this will be a little looser because of the other side already being off. But alright, the Harbor Freight picks are junk. Harbor Freight always kills me because they have all those ads where they're like, Harbor Freight beats Snap-on. And they don't. I'll set this here. Try to point at it as best I can. So we've got both clips out. So what we'll be able to do now is we'll unsnap the top piece from the bottom piece like that, and then this can come out of the way like that, and that really helps to open up the cable paths and show you, kind of what you're working with. So the way cables are run in a Mercedes, it's a little hard to see. So back here there's like these plastic channels the cables run through, and they actually run along the bottom of the car. You can see the channel there, and there's like a lid on the channel, so if you pull the carpet back you can open up the lid and you kind of have a nice path to run all of your cables in. And it's the same way up here, they kind of run over the top through the plastic. So there's a little bit of manipulation that needs to happen, a lot of moving the seats back and forth and playing with trim and other things that are in the way, but a little bit of perseverance and you'll get them all run. If you did need to run speakers into the back door, this is where you would grab them. Looking at the wires that are here, it's very likely that it's this brown and brown-black twisted pair, or it's the gray, yellow, and the gray that are here. It's always a twisted pair, and they're the two heavier gauge ones, but I'm not going to do anything in the back door. So, alright, so at this point we've got the power wire and the speaker wires up to the front. Our factory sub is actually back there somewhere, and I'm likely going to disconnect it. So this needs to get to the battery, which is on the passenger side here, so I'm going to have to find the firewall grommet to bring that through. These speaker wires need to go to the door. The door has a harness that's right there. So sometimes these are removable. In this case it's probably not, because it's a Mercedes and there's probably a plastic. No, actually it does appear to be removable, so you can kind of unsnap that. And then what we'll do is we'll just bring this up where the factory harness goes. And then poke it through our hole. And the trick with this all along the way is to follow the factory harnesses. So, we've got these factory harnesses and these plastic protectors. Use them. This factory harness here is kind of running around and up through this plastic piece here and then through the door. Follow that. The manufacturer was smart enough to build in places for these cables to live and to know that they're going to be reliable locations, so I should be using them. Now this is probably going to be a challenge. One thing here to deal with, from the factory, this door plugs in. So there's this plug in the door. You pull this retainer down, this comes out. Now, because there's a plug here, we're going to have to deal with that. And certain things are going to have wires in it, certain things are not. So, like we have these open fiber ports here. I can probably use those to bring wires through, or these squares here, something along those lines. The other thing is that I could potentially grab the mid. So the mid is probably this green. And I could figure that out when I take the door panel apart, but it's probably this green and green-black. So I can grab that mid here in the in the kick panel and only run one pair of speaker wires in for the tweeters. So when you get this unclipped, to take this apart, this kind of snaps down like that, and then it pulls forward, and then you can see the back. So there's a bunch of stuff that's not really used here. So we have a couple different options that we could employ. We want to be very careful to not mess up this plug though. As you can see, there's a lot of wires, 1, 2, 3, 4, so 4 pin there. There's a couple empties too. I would imagine that the driver's side is a lot more full, and if this was a European car, there'd probably be a lot more pins in this. So the driver's side is probably going to be a bigger challenge than the passenger side, because the that has 4 window switches and just more stuff, the mirror controls and all that kind of stuff. So these high-end European cars are often a challenge. Alright, so I wanted to show you how to remove a door panel on one of these cars. So there are videos on YouTube, but there's 2 T30s, there's one in here, one in here. So you remove those 2 first. And I've already done the passenger side, so I'm going to do the driver's side now. The next thing that you should do is you should remove the tweeter pod. I find that that's easier to do with the window rolled down, but you can really do it either way. This side kind of peel off, and then there's like plastic tabs on the back side that snap in, and then it tips forward. So there's kind of a tab here and here, and then this piece slides in there. So get that removed. Now the door has snaps down the side, down the bottom, up this side, and across the top. And then right in here, there's this, it's like a hook that goes this direction. So we can start at the bottom, and we can pull the door panel free. You can use a pry tool if you want to. I often will try not to, just to keep from marring the door. Even the plastic ones are still not great. There we go. Okay. And generally once one of the snaps gives, they all just kind of pop off. So when you pull this back over here, and the top starts giving way, you want to go back and okay, so on the back side of the door, I'll do my best to grab this. There is a door handle. In my case, it's a green cable. It's right here. So what we want to do is we want to pull that back, up, and then it kind of unsnaps from this 3-prong piece, and that comes out. And then over here, we're going to have the harness that connects to the speaker is plugged in on the door side, and then in this little body control module there's a pair of blue connectors in my case. So we want to unplug those. So there's the first, there's the second. Now, when you've got this door panel off, I wouldn't turn the car on, I wouldn't manipulate anything without that stuff plugged in. There's modules on the door, there's modules here, and you could end up with communications issues or a need to go to a dealer for something stupid, so I would just kind of leave it as is. Now, I started talking a little bit about the harness over on the passenger side, and it was kind of a pain for me to figure out. So, inside the door, or inside the car, you can see the harness right here. That goes into the door. So you can grab, there's one speaker wire there that feeds the door. And right now that speaker wire goes from the head unit through this harness, and it comes out right here, and then it kind of goes up and it becomes these speaker wires. Now, one thing that I will say is on the passenger side of the car, these wires are blue and the wires out here are green. And they change at this plug, which is right here. On the driver's side, it doesn't appear to be that way. I've got blue here, I've got blue inside. So, seems more normal on this side. What I found on the passenger side is that there's like a blue and a blue with a black stripe. The solid color was the positive and the other was the negative. In both cases, green became blue, green with a black stripe became blue with a black stripe. And we can actually just take a look at the door panel, and I can confirm that on this side too. So, in this one, the positive is also the blue, solid blue. So, what I ended up doing on that side is out here, I broke that wire. I used it as my input to my amplifier, and then on my output from my amplifier, I used the factory speaker wire that already goes in and through the door, and I used this to feed the tweeter because it was pretty close. It connects right into it. And then I ran a new speaker wire in that I used to connect the woofer. And generally you're going to be running more power to a woofer than you would to a tweeter anyway, so that kind of makes sense. But this is it's a pain. It really is. So what I ended up doing was I removed this plug here, which has like this clip that comes down. Try to get the video as best I can here. So there's like a little notch on the end here where my finger is. You could stick a tool in there and kind of get this started, and then it slides down and unclips. And that's what I thought might happen. Fun. Okay, well, inside the car, I had, or on the other side of the car, I had one of these holes full and the other two were empty. So what I ended up doing was I split the speaker wire and I ran one wire through that hole and one wire through this hole, and it's just a hole on this side, so it, you know, comes out here eventually. On this side, I don't really have that option because there's only one hole that's free. And I thought that this one might be more challenging than the others. So let me see what I can do here. I'll probably end up using one of these, and maybe I'll drill it out a little bit to make it work. So what I'm going to have to do, and I did this on the other side, is unclip the harness that's actually in the door. So there's like a button on the top, and then this pushes back in the door. And then here, if we pull out this rubber boot. You can see, I mean, there's the entire harness. So we can see what's used and not used. This plug is fairly easy to take apart. You slide this down, and this comes apart. Like that. And you can get at the back side of it. It's a little easier if you pull this rubber piece back. On this side, there's like these tabs. There's 8 of them. So you can see 1, 2, 3. There's 1 at the top. There's 1 at the bottom. And then 3 on this side. So those tabs kind of need to be released to split this plug in half. And I'll be honest with you, it took me a while to get the other one apart. Because you can't really flex it. So you get 1 or 2 unhooked and then the other ones rehook, and it's kind of a pain in the butt. But we'll get it apart. Alright, so I have both plugs apart. So this one is unsnapped and we can see the back side. There are 4 holes on the right. There's 1 at the bottom. Those are kind of my only options that I have to go with here. And then on this plug, it's kind of the same deal. Pull it away. See, there's a hole at the bottom. There's 4 in the back. So, you know, I really have 2 different options. The first is that I open up this hole here to make it big enough that the entire wire can fit through. And I have to do the same thing on this side. On this side it's going to be a little bit more challenging because this is a much smaller piece. Option B is I do what I did on the other side. I split it and I make 2 holes. That's probably what I'm going to end up doing here. Okay. So I open these holes up a little bit using a 3/16 drill bit. Obviously use the size that's appropriate. Go as small as possible. So I opened it on that side and this side. So now I've got these round holes. And my door plug is empty in those positions. Certain cars with certain packages might already have wires there. But it might be for Burmeister or something else. So anyway, so I've got the wires there. Now what I'm going to do, and this is very similar to what I did on the other side. Alright. So I can take these 2 wires, route them through the door, and we want to do them one at a time so that we can ensure that they don't get twisted. So this is the top. And then this is the bottom. Okay. So now we're here with our wire. And we'll pull up that slack in a minute. So from there, we go up into this plug, like that. Okay. Now we can actually put this plug back together. Snap it into place, like that. Then we have to fish this boot. And again, we can do this one at a time. We can do it together. However is easiest for us. one. So now we've got our harness through our boots. We can take this and we can roll it back over like that. Put that on there the right way. Okay. Now, what we want to do is we want to get this guy snapped back in first. So we can pull out on this, put this in there, get this snapped back into place. And for that, you just kind of gotta hook the bottom and then snap the top. You really need to have a lot of this boot in there to be able to get it into position. And then it'll lock in like that. Then, and this is the key, remember I said no twists. So now we need to pull up this slack as we plug these two in. So I find that it's not too bad if you just kind of feed and pull at the same time. There's that right angle in the plug to deal with, so that makes it a little bit more likely to snag. But just a little at a time. And what's really interesting to me about this process that I'm going through right now is about 10 years ago, I worked on a C-Class, and I was doing speakers for a customer, and that had very similar plugs to these. And we actually had to do a similar process to this to get wires into the door to run his components. And you know, at the time it was a huge pain in the butt, but I kind of figured out this process, and you know, it's obviously working for me right now. So we've got this in, this is plugged into place, that's there, and then we can put this back in. What I was getting at was, you know, 2013, a C-Class had this, but my 2014 and 2015 GLKs, well, I guess that C-Class is like a 2010 or a 2011, probably. But my my GLK didn't have that plug that way. It was just a normal loom. You know, so I was surprised to find it here. Because the GLK was based on the C-Class, so it seems like they did away with it, and now it's back. All right. So now that we have that part done, we can work on wiring and, well,